Coming up on this episode of Crime Family.
And we are continuing our finale episode. We're going to do part 2. We've been discussing the Kenley Matheson case. So in this second part, we're going to be talking about, a major turn in the investigation.
This is like the biggest break they've had so far in this case. And she's just kind of, probably very hopeful that this is it.
Erin is like a spirit that came down and killed Jason. This is the words that Toby says that Erin uses. The spirit came down and killed Jason and replaced Jason with Erin. Where there's smoke, there's fire. For there to be that many people kind of pointing the finger, I feel like something had to have happened. So the theory is maybe Erin said to her, he messed with the wrong guy's girlfriend and they'll never find the body.
And sad. She's out there looking under rocks and thinking about the caves, and I don't know. It's just super sad.
Super sad and just super mysterious and overall just perplexing. I can't really just confusing to me. Hey everyone, welcome back to Crime Family. I'm your co-host AJ, and I'm here with Stephanie and Katie, my sisters, as always. And we are continuing our finale episode. We're going to do part 2. We've been discussing the Kenley Matheson case. We discussed, a lot of different theories and possibilities about his disappearance that's still unsolved. So in this second part, we're going to be talking about, a major turn in the investigation based on the documentary called Missing Kenley. So the last 2 episodes of that documentary are really kind of about this new theory that comes up with new information. And we're going to kind of dive into that and talk about all of our theories and everything else about this case that we want to discuss. So thanks so much for tuning in. And Katie's going to kind of start off this episode with some notes on the new turn of events.
Okay, yeah. So I'm just going to jump right in, kind of right where we left off. And like we had said in the first part, this documentary kind of spanned 10 years, and so this new information comes in the summer of 2016. So in June of 2016, 2 sisters from the Wolfville area had come forward to the private investigator who was now on the case, and his name was Tom Martin. And neither of them wanted to talk to the police, and that's why they had reached out to the PI. And one of them had called Crime Stoppers about this and gave them an anonymous tip. But Crime Stoppers really was not interested in what they had to say, and nothing ever came from that. And so that's why they reached out to the PI as well. So the 2 sisters who are kind of the ones that have come forward, they have a third sister who did not want to talk to the PI. And this third sister isn't in the documentary. She's just kind of mentioned. And this sister had a son who was the subject of all the accusations that these other 2 witnesses were making. So the 2 sisters were Sandy and Selena. Their other sister was Suzanne, and they also had a brother named Randy. And Suzanne's son, who was the subject of all of this, his name, it was Jason Kenny. But then he had changed his name. He became a trans woman, and now Jason goes by Aaron Smith. So when all this comes out, we don't really know a lot of the details, but it kind of starts with Sarah, Kenley's mom, calling the RCMP and telling them, look, we found Kenley, I found Kenley, and I just need you to kind of help me secure the site and get his remains and not let this family know that we are suspecting them. And So you kind of get this excitement that, oh, they've figured out what happened, even though you kind of realize quickly that she may have jumped the gun by saying that she knows where Kenley is. But you kind of get it. I mean, this is like the biggest break they've had so far in this case, and she's just kind of, probably very hopeful that this is it and determined to kind of see this through. So Tom, the PI, talks to them. He sits Sarah and Kyrene down, and he says that he believes that the claims that this family is making are truthful, because he says their story is just too elaborate to have them all make it up and kind of remember all the details. And he says that they say that they don't want any part of the reward that is associated with this case. I think at that time it was like $150,000 reward if an arrest was made, but these two sisters were saying they really didn't want to take any of that. So that wasn't a motivation for them, which kind of makes it seem a little bit more legitimate, because they're just coming forward.
Coming forward with nothing to gain. Like, there's no financial gain they want. It can only like harm the family. So it makes sense that like them coming forward, it's like, why would you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing to gain, so it feels a little bit more accurate.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, they're just coming forward because they want to get the truth out there, basically, not to get this money. So July 8th, 2016, Kyrene and Sarah are supposed to meet with the investigator to get his full report that indicated where Kenley's body was, and to release the suspect's name, because at this time the family still didn't know. But at the last minute, the investigators were advised that they should take it to the RCMP first instead. And so that's what they do. And the family, Sarah and Kyrene, are still kind of left hanging, not knowing all these details. Sarah actually takes it upon herself to call her RCMP contact, Troy, just because she felt that the PI wasn't making the right decision and keeping all this information to himself. And so I guess the whole thing was that there was going to be like a 5-day delay because the officer that was going to be in charge was on vacation or couldn't meet with them for 5 days. And so she just thought they had to get this information out there before the suspect was tipped off, before anybody else got hurt, because his information came out. And so she contacted the police just to be like, we need to get moving on this now, was basically her thought. So she reaches out to the RCMP and talks to the officer named Troy. And like I said, she tells him straight up that they had found Kenley, and she doesn't actually have names or addresses. And she tells him that she knows that he's in a swampy ravine somewhere on a property in Wolfville, and that Troy needs to contact the PI, Tom Martin, for all the details. And he says that after he talks to Troy, if all this information is good, then they can kind of go forward with this new tip that they have. So Sarah and Kyrene are kind of thinking that this is it and that things are going to kind of happen very quickly. But even after 6 weeks since that tip came in, the RCMP have not done anything further with this information that they have. And they are saying that there really isn't any reasonable evidence or enough evidence for them to go and excavate the land or look further. Like, they can't do that kind of an extensive search. The police finally do talk to Aaron Smith, who denies knowing Kenley and denies knowing anything about his disappearance. And she also refuses to take a polygraph test at that time. So it's not until December of 2016 when the names of the suspect is finally released to Sarah. And like I said, she's told that the suspect's name is Jason Kenny. Now she goes by Aaron Smith. And the Kenny property is this large property on a lot that used to be a farm. It's very overgrown. There's a ravine that runs through it, a very deep ravine. And finally, on December 8th, 2016, that's when the RCMP decide that they can go and search the property. And so they get out there. It's just the RCMP officers at this time. They don't really have any cadaver dogs or anything, but they don't find anything on the property. So interviews and information from the family that had come forward is finally released to Sarah and her family. And this is kind of like what they're saying happened, or the information that they have. So while the information is kind of hearsay, it's like someone said this to this person and now they're telling this person and then they tell the PI. So it's a very like a convoluted kind of story. So I'll try to make it as clear as I can here. So one of the sisters, Sandy, tells the PI that her sister Selena told her in June of 2016 that she had a secret that she had been keeping. She said that their brother Randy told her that her other sister Suzanne had come to him all in a panic, and that whatever she said to him led Randy to believe that their niece Erin had done some harm to another young man. And so when Erin was confronted by Randy, she denied everything, but she did allegedly say that something along the lines of, they will never find him. Randy also remembers this conversation with Suzanne about Erin, and he says that Erin was interested in a girl at Acadia, and that she suspected that Erin had done something to another boy at Acadia who also liked this same girl. And so he recalls that when he talked to Erin was very calm about it. He wasn't nervous, kind of cool as a cucumber, he said. And he said he doesn't remember exactly what Erin said, but yeah, this is like Randy's version of the story, so it's like a little bit different than what Selena had told Sandy. So Randy remembers that Erin smugly said something like, "Will never be found," or "It won't be a problem," something along those lines with like a little smile. And it made him think that something bad had happened or that she had done something bad to this other person. So Randy says that he doesn't know where Erin would have hid or buried a body if he did do anything, but Randy tells them about the spot on the property that no one ever goes. He says it's a very dark and dank, nasty, deep hollow, and said no one would ever follow you there. So he's thinking about this ravine, I think, on this farm property. And when they talk about Erin a little bit, so Selena and Randy kind of have a conversation. Like, she says to Randy, quote, "Do you think Jason had that sex change operation to spite his father?" And Randy says, quote, "No, he did it to be somebody else, to not be who he was anymore." And Selena says, quote, "Why would he do that?" And then Randy says, quote, "You might too if you did what he did." And then when she asks Randy what he did, he says, quote, "Do you remember that boy that went missing in Acadia back in the 90s? Well, Jason did him in." And he said, quote, "Jason killed him." And then Selena asked how Randy knew all this. Randy said, quote, "Jason told me he did it." So these conversations are what some of the other sisters are telling the PI what Randy told them, because when they kind of go back and talk to Randy about it, he doesn't have this level of detail that they're saying. Like, he says that Erin never really confessed anything to him, so I don't know if they're just not remembering the details properly, if they're maybe making things up to make it sound a little bit more convincing, but that's just kind of where the stories are a little bit confusing. So when they're still talking about this whole situation, Selena asks about the chicken pit that used to be on their property, and she says, "Do you think that he threw him in the chicken pit?" And Randy says, "That's exactly what he did with him." And Selena kind of describes the farm that used to be on the Kenny property, and it was one of those like awful kind of cruel farms where they would have like 30,000 chickens crammed onto one floor of the barn, and then another floor would have like another 25,000 chickens on the second floor. And so every day they would have to go around and kind of gather up all these dead chickens that would just die because they were just living in these horrible conditions. And so that was just kind of an everyday thing. And she says they threw them all into this thing that they called the chicken pit, which is like a giant hole in the ground. And they used to throw all their old rotten produce down there as well. And Selena says that she had physically was out there one time with them while they were throwing stuff in the pit, and just had like this horrendous stench that came out of it, as you can imagine. And like if you ever wanted to get rid of a human body or get rid of anything that no one would ever find, like that would be the place to throw it. So when they're talking about this years later, Randy said that he believes, quote, that Canadian psycho got away with one. So it seems like he's very convinced that Aaron was involved in this, but kind of later you'll see that he really is less convinced of his own information that he had. And so 10 months after the RCMP had received Tom Martin's report, they conducted a search of the property, and this time they brought in a cadaver dog to kind of help them with the search. And the dog didn't find anything still, but they didn't actually go over the whole property. They were only there for a little over an hour to search this big farm property. They didn't actually go to where the chicken pit was located. And so it seems like they definitely missed a lot of places. And I don't know, for whatever reason, it just seems like the attitude of that officer that was in charge of the dog really had this nonchalant attitude that it was, it was a burden for him to even be there. Like that was kind of the sense that I got from this guy. So like, what do you guys think about like this whole search that they done? Like they obviously thought this was credible enough to get out there and search, but then they didn't find anything. Like what are your thoughts
For
on this
me,
whole
it
theory
was
so
like,
far?
I don't know. I think it wasn't obviously thorough enough. I think maybe they did it to like, it's like they just did it to say that they did, or to look good, or to show that they're caring. But I don't really think that they put as much effort into it as they could have. I think, I don't know. For me, I just feel like there's probably some portions of that property or something that was unchecked or not checked thoroughly. I just can't really say for sure, but I would just assume that they did do a thorough enough check, just from that's my opinion. But it didn't seem like they really cared as much as maybe it looks like they did, just because, they're doing a search. But I think for me, it was more of like a, let's do this just to say we care kind of vibe, even though that's not really what they were going for. I don't know.
I do agree with you. I don't think they actually did enough searching the grounds. Like, it's a big property, so it would take days and months to search it. And I don't think they just didn't care enough to search the whole thing. So who knows, like there could have been an area they never searched, and that's the area that you could find what you're looking for. But yeah, I don't think they cared enough to do any of that.
Yeah, and they didn't even search that ravine. Apparently, like the police had never gone down to that ravine to search. They didn't bring a cadaver dog down into that ravine. So I don't know if when you get like a search warrant like that, like you can only search certain spots, and they just didn't have permission to go through the whole property. But I don't know why you wouldn't. So it just seems like they had this big opportunity that they kind of missed.
Yeah, and like Steph said, it would have taken months or weeks or months to like search a property that big. I feel like they've searched smaller properties for longer. So the fact that they didn't take that time shows that they just weren't thorough. I don't think so. Like, just because the fact that they didn't find anything on the property to me doesn't see like, see, there's nothing here. I think it's like, well, no, you didn't find anything because you didn't look hard enough.
Yeah, and I mean this whole ravine, like it's forest and it's overgrown. It's really hard to even get in there. And so if there was a body in there, it would definitely be well hidden this many years later. So they would definitely need the help of cadaver dogs and professional searchers to do a thorough job. And like the police just really weren't offering that to them. So it really is unfortunate that they could never really get this thorough search done. And I mean, as they go on with this whole theory that Aaron Smith had something to do with it, Randy, like I said, his story, it's not like his story changes, but it's different than what his sisters were claiming had happened. They claim that he came to one of them saying all this stuff. When he talks about it, he just kind of says, I never really got a straight answer from Aaron. He never actually said anything to me about it. I wasn't even really sure what the whole conversation was about. I wasn't sure what I was even asking her. So it seems like this whole thing, like, it seemed so promising at the beginning, but then once you get down into the details, it's like, not really sure what happened, or if, like, I want to believe that their story is credible, because why come forward with all this? But they just, it seems like they're remembering different bits and pieces of it.
Yeah, and I also feel like I get the vibe, and I guess there was probably some things that were stated in the documentary too, that like this is a family with a lot of history, a lot of people, and a lot of, you know, turmoil maybe. So, you know, you could just argue, well, maybe they're just reporting this to get back at someone or something, you know. I don't think that's the case, but I also think they're just, maybe they went to the police, or they went to the PI with maybe just information that was not accurate, but like the way they're remembering it is just different than what actually happened. Not saying that Aaron didn't say these things about having done this thing to Kenley or something, but I feel like maybe they like kind of not jumped the gun because they waited this long, but you know what I mean, like maybe they went forward with information that they didn't know 100% that was true or not, or remembered it wrong, or misinterpreted what was said, and then went to conclusions or something. I don't know, but I do think it is credible. But I just think they didn't have all of the information in line, and then when they go to recall it, it's like half missing and different than each other's, you know?
Yeah, I think like the PI got this information and then they just kind of got too excited that this was the big break that they've been waiting for this whole time. Because when you're talking to one of the sisters, Sandy, she says that, oh, Randy has one of the greatest memories ever, and Selena remembers like exact conversations that people have, but yet their stories aren't matching up. So it's either she's kind of exaggerating their ability to remember, people are remembering things differently, or people are just thinking things are true when they're not, or they don't want to remember certain details. So yeah, it's just, it becomes very kind of iffy once they kind of get into this further.
Well, I kind of got the sense that Randy was sort of walking it back. Like once he said this to his sisters, and then once like confronted with it by the PI, or you know, once it's out there and then they come questioning, it's like he's trying to walk it back, maybe trying to like, because it's still his like family member, right? So maybe he's trying to like not sugarcoat it, but like put a spin on it that makes it different than what he initially was said to his sisters. You know what I mean? So I think maybe he got a little bit scared off, maybe by like what could happen as a result of this.
Maybe it became like more serious than he was expecting it to, and now he actually, you know, is bringing this to the PI and the RCMP. So yeah, maybe he is kind of just hesitant about what the repercussions could actually be for his family.
And maybe he said it in like a heat of the moment. He admitted this, right? Like that, oh, like Aaron came to me with this, and then now that like he's thinking like, oh shit, like, you know, like now he's like, oh, it's for real this time. Like I have to recount this information and has like serious consequences potentially. So it's like,
yeah, that's true.
That's why.
But I mean, he even goes down into the ravine with the filmmaker, and they kind of look around because he says that he had dreams about that place, and so he just kind of wanted to go down there and look around. And like, I mean, when you see this place, there's no way you'd ever find anything if you're looking for something specific, just how like overgrown and large it is. So yeah, it's just kind of interesting where the story goes.
Yeah. So I guess like, so like you said, the filmmaker goes with Randy to like check out this ravine, and nothing really comes of it. Obviously, it's just like Randy and the filmmaker, like not that they're ever going to actually find anything, but he even says, Randy's like, you know, gotta look, just, you know, not saying anything's going to come, but you just gotta feel better looking, having looked. But then they also approach Randy with the idea of doing hypnosis to think if maybe this will jog his memory, because there's like half a story here that it's not really clear. You know, Aaron is saying that she potentially did this thing, and then it's like a bad game of telephone, as people are kind of remembering their version of it. So anyway, like in the documentary, they show Randy going to hypnosis and goes through a few like lessons or whatever, or sessions, I guess, and nothing really comes up of it either. He kind of like recounts, the filmmaker like then reads back Randy's statement to him that he said, to see if that like triggers a memory, because there is like a missing piece in there that Randy was hoping that maybe could like with hypnosis could be found. You know, there's just some information that's not really out there. But I think like the major thing that sticks out to me in this documentary is what happens in the last episode, is when they actually go. So Kenley's mother, Sarah, goes with the filmmaker to Aaron's home in Nova Scotia, and kind of like ambushes her, I guess. Just kind of, Sarah just goes up and knocks on her door, and starts saying like, "Hello, want to
Oh
talk to
yeah,
you."
it's
So
like the camera's off, but it was rolling the whole time.
oh my god, yeah. Like I've got like a little shady, right? Like, oh, like Erin agrees, but only if she's not on camera. And then like it shows the entire conversation on video.
I know,
So a little bit sketchy.
we get in trouble for that, but anyway.
Yeah, I feel like it's
I
not
know.
ethical. But anyway, yeah, so they go and they're just talking to Erin, which like to me, like I was just kind of like glued to like when I was watching this part, because it's like, this is like the so-called suspect. And anyway, they're just talking to Erin, who denies ever knowing anything about Kenley. She says that the RCMP she never knew Kenley while at Acadia, and she says the RCMP, because the RCMP went and questioned Erin initially and provided what they thought was a picture of Kenley, but Erin says no, they just showed me a sketch of Kenley, and it was never actually a picture. So the documentary filmmaker actually shows Erin a picture of Kenley, and Erin says that's the first time she's ever seen a picture of Kenley. Didn't even know what he looked like or anything like that. So Erin just kind of continues to have this conversation.
I feel like that's not true, though. Sorry,
Well,
that's just me speculating.
that she's never seen a picture of Kenley.
Yeah,
She claims to not know Kenley and had not even heard about his disappearance ever, because she says when the RCMP first talked to her about it, she thought it was a scam because she was saying she had no idea about this case at all. And I mean, I don't think I went into this, but like her connection with Kenley was basically they both went to Acadia at the same time. But she says they never partied together. They didn't kind of run in the same circles. She never met him. So, yeah.
What an interesting note that I do have is like during that part of the doc where they're in Erin's house, and Erin's kind of makes it like a point to say, "Oh yeah, we didn't run in the same circles. Like he went to parties, and if that was the type of doing drugs and all that stuff, and me and my friends, we just played Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't even live on campus, and I was staying with my girlfriend, and blah blah blah, and all that stuff." And she says that her friends are engineers all over the world, and they were like really smart, and that's why she just didn't associate with that crowd, which I just find interesting, and I'll bring it up a little bit later in another part about why I kind of found that interesting. But
she kept going on. She kept talking about herself. Every time they would ask a question, she'd talk about herself.
Well, like I guess I'm going to ask, like, what did you guys think of that interaction? I would say the scene's like maybe 10 minutes in that episode. Like they pretty much show like their conversation until the memory card dies. I think in the episode, like it just goes black because I think the memory card died. But I think that part of it is like 10 minutes where they're just talking with her. And like, what did you guys think of that interaction? Did you believe what she was saying? Did you find her sketchy? Like, what did you think?
Yeah, I found it a little bit sketchy. I found that she was quick to answer the questions, but also she was kind of bringing it back to herself. Like she kept talking about like how she had she's really smart, like high IQ, and she kept I remember everything, and like just kind of bring it back to herself. Like she was kind of avoiding the questions, but I don't know. It seemed a little bit odd to me.
Yeah, and she was saying that she has a photographic memory and that she would finish the whole semester's homework in a couple weeks just because she kind of absorbed everything as quick as she read it. But then they show her grades and she withdrew from a lot of classes and she just got like D's and C's. Which doesn't necessarily mean she's not smart, because just because you're smart doesn't mean you necessarily test well or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't know how to read her. And I guess when you first have that interaction, I don't know, I sort of thought she was believable, that she didn't know, she had nothing to do with it. She kind of had a falling out with her mother many years ago, so maybe that her mom was like, this was her family's way of getting back at her because she was kind of estranged from them. She said she hadn't talked to Randy since she was 16, so there's like this dynamic where the family doesn't get along. So maybe they thought that for whatever reason they were gonna kind of get back at her by blaming all this on her. That's kind of the vibe that I got until they talked to her other sibling a little bit later on.
Yeah, so I didn't really know what to make of it. I thought she was kind of like sketchy as well. I don't know. I didn't really know what to make. Like her eyes were kind of darting from one to another. Like just look kind of like maybe, I don't know. But some people also. But also, I mentioned that because I told you my roommate is actually the one who found this documentary and told me about it. But she was saying, because we were talking about it, and she was like, but people who have photographic memory sometimes do that with their eyes, right? Like they're like in tune with everything. So their eyes sometimes will dart, back and forth because they're like keeping a mental note of it. Like that's what she said. I don't know if that's true or like medically accurate, but she's like, so that could be, because during it, that kind of shows her she's like looking from like just kind of sketchy to me. And I don't know, I felt kind of, there's a part of me that I like felt kind of bad for her too in some way. Well, A, because she's being filmed and doesn't know it, which is unethical, but like B, like I don't know, a part of me just, I don't know, I just kind of felt bad for her. Like if it is true, like all of her family like doesn't get along with her, and like she's like dissociated from her family and all of that stuff, and then all of a sudden, like if this isn't true and all of a sudden people are coming to her, RCMP is questioning her, and like people are accusing her of all this stuff, then I feel bad for her. But also, why would your family accuse you of that? Like, you might not get along with your family, but why would you accuse them of murder if it wasn't true? I don't know. But during that moment where they're in her house, I just was like, I don't know, just looking for any like little thing that she would say to kind of see if she might say something that implicated her or something. So I can't go one way or the other. I mean, I tend to believe that she had something to do with it because all these members of her family are coming and saying that she herself has said that she did it and made statements of like, oh, it won't be a problem or they'll never find him. Stuff like that. Like, I just tend to believe it. And like Kenley's mother is just like, casually having a conversation, like asking like questions like, oh, there's something wrong with your leg, or oh, just kind of like trying to maybe like get her to say something and see if it would lead to anything. But yeah, that whole part was sketchy. But they did say, like, kind of like they have text that comes up and says that like Erin claims that she has a IQ of 173, and she also says that she has Klinefelter syndrome. I think that's how you pronounce it. And then the documentary says that the odds of both of those things being true are about 1 in 2 billion with a B.
What did you say? What disease?
Klinefelter, I think it's how you pronounce it, but I looked it up and it's like when someone is born with an extra X chromosome or something.
Oh, okay.
But the documentary claims that the likelihood of you having Klinefelter syndrome and also a 173 IQ, don't know how they would have tested this, but they say 1 in 2 billion of that actually being true. But then the documentary also says that that was like refuted by contradictory evidence. So I don't really know what to believe. If maybe she does have a photographic memory. I think it's just trying to say like she's trying to paint this picture of her being something that she's not, saying she has this really high IQ and she doesn't. She's failing. And then they show like her transcripts from Acadia. She's failing all these classes with drawing. So why is she saying she has a really high IQ? Why is she saying she has Klinefelter? Like, I feel like she must have that if she's saying she does. Why would you lie about that? But I think it's just kind of like meant again by this filmmaker to kind of like throw into question everything she says. Like, if you're going to lie about having an 173 IQ, like what else would you lie about? I feel like that's the point that is trying to come across in that part. They talk to Erin's other sibling, Toby May Saunders, who actually didn't want to have an interview, but then actually agrees to have an interview with the filmmaker and kind of has an interview that kind of like changes a lot of ideas I thought like I had about the case. And because like you said, Katie, yeah, when they all up to this point, all the stuff about Erin is totally speculative and you didn't really think, you kind of questioning it. But then when Toby has this interview with the filmmaker, kind of like does change everything, where Toby talks a little bit about Erin and about, having the sex change operation. Toby says that Erin went to kind of charmed some guy in the States and then went to Thailand to have the sex change because she was denied in Canada for one. She didn't pass like a psych evaluation that they make you take. And so she went to Thailand to do that, was treating herself with hormones, and then came back to Canada just before the tsunami in Thailand happened, all that stuff. So Toby just says you have to be really careful when you're talking with Erin, because in Erin's mind, Erin was, I guess the way Toby words it, like in Erin's, like Erin is like a spirit that came down and like killed Jason. This is the words that Toby says that Erin uses, like the spirit came down and killed Jason and like replaced Jason with Erin. So like when you ask a question of like, do you know Kenley? Like in Erin's mind, she's a completely different person than Jason. It's not like she once was Jason and is now Erin. It's like Erin is a completely different identity and like being. So when you ask Erin, do you know Kenley? The answer would be no, because Erin didn't know Kenley. Jason knew Kenley. So Toby says, like, when you're asking these questions, you have to be careful of the way that you word the questions, because if you're just asking, like, does she know Kenley? Well, she's going to say no because Erin didn't know Kenley, and like that kind of thing. But then Toby also says that like she distinctly remembers being in like a flashback to watching the news report that happened covering the case. And in that moment, she says that Aaron said something that kind of shocked her and her mother, like, that little asshole messed with the wrong guy's girlfriend, and his body is in the bear caves in Melanson Mountain, or something to that effect, which is obviously, like, I just find it weird that somebody would just say that. If you're trying to hide the fact that you did it, why would you come out and say that to your own family members? And also during Aaron's interview that they have, or talk that they have with Aaron when they're at Aaron's home, Aaron does mention that someone in her family is a part of the RCMP who was kind of giving her advice, like telling her not to do the polygraph when they asked and all this stuff. So apparently, I think it was Aaron's father was part of the RCMP. So when Aaron's mother went to her father after Aaron had said that, the dad was kind of just like, don't tell anyone, never mention it again. And so then for years, like, Aaron's mother never mentioned it. They kind of just forgot about it. So then when the RCMP all these years later are coming back with these questions about Kenley Matheson, we're here to question you. They're like, who is Kenley Matheson? Like, what is this about? And then they're like, oh yeah, is this the missing student that Aaron told us or made that comment about? Which is super, super sketchy. And also Toby May Saunders says she remembers actually meeting Kenley because Kenley was in their home as a friend, because was friends with Aaron at that time when they were Acadia students. And she actually remembers Kenley having a conversation with her mother saying, you know, mother was like kind of being friendly, trying to get to know Aaron's friends. And she was saying Kenley wasn't really being too, or this person wasn't being too descriptive, wasn't really saying much, was just kind of giving short answers. But that she believes that that person in her home that night was Kenley. And this would have been obviously before he went missing in September of 1992, because remember, Kenley had only been there for a couple of weeks at Acadia before he went missing. So Toby is saying that she is 100% sure that Kenley was in her living room as a friend of Aaron's back in September of 1992, which, if that's true, puts even more suspicion that maybe Aaron did have something to do with it. If they are friends, or they at least knew each other, then that could be, you know, they had a history. So when Aaron's saying that she doesn't know Kenley, never heard of Kenley's name, doesn't know what he looks like, that's not actually true. But then, like I said, in Aaron's mind, it is true because Aaron didn't know Kenley, right? So it is kind of like, it's a matter of like semantics, I guess, for Aaron.
Yeah, so it's like Aaron completely dissociates her past as Jason, and because she is now Aaron, it's like, yeah, anything that Jason did, she doesn't know anything about because that's not her anymore. So I feel like that is like a little bit scary to think that she can dissociate like that. But it kind of makes sense that if she's able to do that, then she can have all these lies with a straight face saying that, yeah, like, I didn't know him, I don't know him. And herself kind of believe that it's true. And I mean, she says that they were so different, like she was so different from Kenley, there's no way they would have been friends. But even early on in the documentary, it says that Kenley kind of fit in with everybody. Like, he wasn't a jock, but he hung out with like the sports people, he hung out with the nerdier people. So it's not too far off to believe that they could have struck up a friendship just because Kenley was so personable and got along with everybody. So yeah, it's super, super sketchy.
Yeah, and also, and like another thing I was going to mention was in this interview that Toby is giving, she says that Aaron went to all the parties because when the news report came up in 1992 of this missing Acadia student, that's why Aaron's mother asked Aaron, like, oh, do you know this student? Like, you know, you went to all the parties, you were sociable. So it's just interesting that now Aaron's sister is saying that Aaron did go all the parties and did do all of that sort of stuff, when Aaron made a very big point in their conversation with the filmmaker to be like, no, that was a different crowd, we didn't really do that. So it's just interesting, like, which story do you believe? Because if if Aaron did go to all the parties and was sociable, like, that's other also interactions. Like, did something happen at the tower party? Like, if Aaron was at that tower party that Kenley was really drunk at, did something happen? Kenley was hitting on people's girlfriends. Remember, that was a story that came out. So, like, was maybe Aaron's girlfriend there? They got into an altercation, you know, something happened? Because that would have only been a couple of days before Kenley was last seen. So that's also a possibility, too. If Aaron did go to all these parties and was a big partier, like her sister seems to claim, when Aaron herself says that she wasn't in that scene. So it's just like interesting sort of details that do come up. But also something else too was that Toby mentions in this interview sort of something about how Aaron said they'll never find Kenley, and also we did things to throw the police off. And then in that moment, the documentary flashes to, the Greenpeace ad, and it flashes to like the backpack or the jacket, like kind of like little tidbits from the case. So it makes you wonder, like, were certain things planted there to throw the police off? Like, was that Greenpeace ad, I guess if you're going with the theory that Aaron was involved, like, did Aaron kill Kenley and then go to the room and like rip out a Greenpeace ad to make people think that he just went up and left? Maybe Aaron knew a little bit about Kenley. Like, maybe Kenley had disclosed, like, yeah, I want to work for Greenpeace, or, I like to travel. Or so then she got the idea of, like, killed her, and then was like, oh, well, if I just make it look like maybe he just got up and left, then no one's going to think anything of it, or people might think that that's what happened. So it kind of makes you wonder in that moment of like, well, was the Greenpeace ad just a red herring? Did the person who do it just do that to throw police off, or is that something legitimate? So that was just interesting too. And I don't know, like, one way or the other, obviously. Then it does flash on the screen during near the end of the documentary that Aaron did eventually agree to a polygraph after 2.5 years of refusing one. She does agree to a polygraph. She's asked 3 questions by a different RCMP officer who doesn't know anything about the case, so it's like unbiased. She only asked 3 questions, and she does pass the polygraph. So she did pass, but I mean, we know they're not admissible in court. So, and it was only 3 questions, so it wasn't like an in-depth sort of Q&A. It was just sort of basic questions, I would assume. So that's just a note as well. Obviously, she's denied everything, and she's passed the polygraph, so there's no physical forensic evidence to suggest. And also with this family too, there was sort of this debate of whether there was a chicken pit or not. Some family members remember the chicken pit being there. Others say there was no chicken pit. They show it like satellite footage of this alleged chicken pit, which is weird to me that they even don't know if there even was a chicken pit. So it's just a lot of unknowns at this time. So what are you guys' kind of theory? Like, what do you think there was a chicken pit, A? And B, do you think it was Aaron who did something and maybe threw police off with the Greenpeace ad? Or like, what do you guys kind of think?
I think there was a chicken pit because they did have chickens. That we know they had chickens. So
do we know that though?
Didn't they say they had chickens?
Yeah, I think them having a large chicken farm was like a fact.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so knowing that they had a chicken farm, then that would make sense they had a chicken pit. And then going to Aaron, I'm actually kind of leaning towards it. Maybe she did, because there's so many different people in her family saying that she did it, and why would you accuse somebody of such a heinous thing if they actually didn't do it? I feel like she did do it, and I feel like there needs to be more investigated and dig deeper into her past and what she was like as Jason. Like, I know they know some things, but I think they need to look more into it and get to the bottom of it, because something to me doesn't seem right about that.
Yeah, like, again, why would her whole family be pointing the finger? Not her whole family, but members of her family are pointing the finger at her. Like I said, I have family members, like distant family members, that I don't like or don't care. But I wouldn't accuse them of murder. Like, just because you don't like someone and have a vendetta doesn't mean you would accuse someone of murder. Like, to me, that's just weird that multiple people are doing that. And kind of like that saying of, where there's smoke, there's fire. Like, for there to be like that many people kind of pointing the finger, I feel like something had to have happened. So the theory is maybe, Aaron's sister is saying that Aaron said to her, he messed with the wrong guy's girlfriend and they'll never find the body, blah, blah, blah. So the theory is like, did Kenley hit on Aaron's girlfriend and, heat of the moment, something happened and then Aaron went and covered it up and hid the body? Or did Aaron get somebody to do it for her? Was there a group of people that maybe took Kenley, did something to him? Like, Aaron, you know what I mean? Like, it could have been not just Aaron by herself. It could have been multiple people, or her group of friends, or people she knew, or something. So it's just crazy to me. And then in the documentary, Kenley's mother does go to Melanson Mountain, where, Kenley's body is alleged to be, and she kind of searches on her own. Of course, she's not really going to find anything. She doesn't have the police capacity to find really anything. So that part was also sad, when Kenley's mother was just searching for the remains there. And And then towards the end of the documentary, like one of the last things was like, as production on the documentary is wrapping up and they're in post-production, they actually get an anonymous email from someone who sends an email to the filmmaker just saying that, you know, she wanted to come to him anonymously because she's worried about the family being the Kenny family, like Erin's family and all those people who are accusing her, saying that someone came to her door and said that their child was kind of a suspect in a long known cold case, and that, you know, kind of just reiterating the story of like thinking that it could have been Erin involved, that Erin mentioned that she had killed a fellow student, and that, you know, people were asking questions, and she was just asking this person. So like Erin's mother maybe was asking this person who sent the email, you know, came to her door and said like, do you think that the police would be able to do anything if there's no body? Maybe just kind of questioning if, you know, if things kind of picked up in the investigation, if there could be charges laid, like maybe kind of just putting it out there. Like, is that a possibility? I don't know why she would ask this person that, but in their conversation that came up. So this person just wanted to come forward with this information. She went to they went to the Crime Stoppers tip line, never got a follow-up, never got an interview or anything with them. Seems like they didn't care. So she just had her next course of action was to just go to the filmmaker with this anonymous email. But she wanted to be anonymous because she's scared of the family and they're becoming more erratic and things like that. So just another piece of information that makes you wonder, like, who is this person sending the email, first of all, and B, like, now that's another case of someone in this family mentioning that, you know, Erin had mentioned doing something to another student. So like that, now there's another person, but also we don't know who this person is. It was a Jane Doe. They're anonymous. So could that also be like, I don't know why somebody would make that up, like to further implicate this family. Like maybe somebody just wanted to send this email to further implicate the family, even if they have no knowledge. But I tend to believe what was written in the email just because it seems plausible, and, you know, but we don't know who the person is. So we have no idea to know whether they're telling the truth or not. So what did you guys think of like that email and kind of like how it sort of ended? Because the documentary kind of ends with that.
I think it's strange. But then again, it goes back to like Erin. Like she's obviously accusing Erin again. So like you said, there's that fourth person, whoever's accusing the same person of this crime. So I think they need to look into that more further and see if they can find who did it and who sent it and what that means.
Yeah, it just kind of makes it like more believable that Erin could have had something to do with it, because there's this other person coming forward just wanting to make sure the information is out there. And yeah, like I just at first I just wanted to believe that Kenley like left on his own and that something may have happened to him, but this whole theory at the end, like it just seems like too much for it not to be true as well. So I don't know, I'm still caught between the two theories, that he took off, something happened to him, and that Erin did something to him, or somebody did something to him. So I mean, yeah, I guess just to be clear, like Erin was never like a suspect or accused of anything or charged, so that's just a theory that's out there. And also, like when you were saying that Sarah, Kenley's mother, was like looking in the ravine, kind of trying to look into the caves, just to try to find the remains. Like she even said she doesn't care if the perpetrator ever gets punished or goes to jail. Like at this point, she just wants to bring Kenley home, which is like so sad. Like she's just like, I just want him home. It doesn't matter what happened or who did it. Like just tell me where he is, kind of thing. So that was sad.
Yeah, that was so sad. And it's also so sad, like the state of affairs, that like she has to go by herself to go and search for the remains because no one else cares. So the fact that she has to go by herself and search for them is really sad. That like the people with the capability to actually do the search is like doesn't give a shit.
I know.
So that's sad.
Yeah, like imagine just getting a couple like cadaver dogs out there for the day. How much more ground they could cover. And sad she's out there like looking under rocks and like thinking about the caves, and I don't know. It's just super sad.
Yeah. And like there was also throughout the documentary people who would say that, you know, they went to psychics, like the family went to psychics and had like readings and stuff, who said that the body was near water. And that also that woman who said that Kenley came to her door for Greenpeace said that she had like a premonition that he was near water or something. And like the ravines and the caves is kind of in like an area where it'd be near water. So also another like weird thing if it were to be true, like a connection there. I mean, who knows if the psychics were legit or not? Obviously, we'll never know that. Just super sad and super sketchy. But also, so I guess you have to sort of, coming out of the documentary after you watch it, you believe sort of the theory with Aaron, because there's so much there that kind of, you can't ignore it, more so than the other theories. But to me, like, something did happen and Aaron killed Kenley like the night that he went missing or shortly after that. Why would he be seen by all these people in Halifax after that, in like the year after that? That doesn't really explain that. Or going to that woman's door working for Greenpeace, like that doesn't make sense either. And that was in 97, which would have been 5 years after he went missing.
I know. That's why I am like caught between those two theories where he was out there, but then on the other hand, he was killed in September of 1992. Like, I can't make up my mind which one I feel like happened. So it's weird.
Yeah. If you believe the Aaron theory and all of that, it doesn't explain all those sightings. And if you believe the sightings that he just ran away, then there's so many questions of like, why are all these fingers getting pointed at Aaron? And why is, Aaron allegedly admitting to it all these years ago? And again, that's hearsay and we'll never know, or it's just an allegation. So it's just super frustrating and so many questions. We don't have any answers, of course. It's still unsolved. But there were sort of some revelations that came out after the documentary. So the filmmaker is keeping track of updates in the case on the official Twitter page, and is posting documents and RCMP emails and all of this stuff because he's still kind of investigating this case or looking into it and following it. And one of the major kind of developments that came out after the documentary came out was that, remember that lead RCMP officer, Troy Allen, who was kind of Sarah's contact throughout it, and he was the one that she went to with that information from the PI that Aaron's family was saying that Aaron was a person of interest. So it actually came out that Troy Allen is related to Aaron and that family, and was put on the case in 2016 once Aaron became a suspect from all this information, was put onto the case. And then in 2019, Aaron was deemed no longer a suspect because by that point she had passed that 3-question polygraph and was dropped as an official suspect. And then after that, Troy Allen was taken off the case after that. So that seems super sketchy, that for the 3 years that Aaron was kind of, as a suspect, they put him on the case. And that's, when Sarah goes to him with that information and then nothing happens for 6 weeks, seems like he's actively trying to sabotage the investigation. Doesn't really do a thorough search of the grounds that Sarah says that Kenley's body could be on, and the Kenny family farm, all of that stuff. So, I mean, given all that information, it makes sense why the RCMP are doing, jack shit about any of it.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that Troy Allen was related to Aaron's family and he was put on the case. Like, that doesn't seem right. Like, I don't think you should be allowed to do that. Like, that's nuts.
I know it doesn't seem like it should be allowed to happen, but the RCMP says it's not. I guess there was like a statement or something, or they responded to an email from the filmmaker, said like it's not illegal that he's on this case. I guess technically, I don't know. It's definitely a conflict of interest at the very least.
That is strange that he was put on the case because, like, I feel like that's not right.
Yeah, because like you have a personal interest in making sure that they're not looked at any further, and that they like get off, kind of. So, yeah, it seems strange.
Yeah, and it's just crazy. Like someone that you're related to is a prime suspect, and all of a sudden, all these major tips aren't being followed up on, and all of this information isn't being investigated. Like, oh, that's a strange coincidence. So it's like pretty crazy that was even allowed to happen, but it was for 3 years. So little did Sarah know. Like, it's kind of sad looking back when you watch the documentary now. It's like when Sarah makes that phone call to Troy Allen telling him, we found Kenley, we have this information from a PI, like she's could have unwittingly been like tipping off this head RCMP investigator who can then go back to this family or to Aaron and like, give that information or to like thwart sort of the progress. So it's kind of sad when you watch that part of the documentary knowing like, oh my God, don't make that call, Sarah. Like, don't tell Troy. And I guess there's no way, because if he's the head person on this case, like everything has to go through him, right? No matter when the tips come in, no matter who gives them. So it's just like sad.
I guess, but there was supposed to be somebody else that was supposed to lead up this case, but Sarah didn't want to wait for that other person to come back, remember? So that could have been a part in it. If they would have just waited, it would have been someone different that took the case.
Yeah, that's true. It's just sad. So if you want to follow that Twitter account, it's at Missing Kenley. So just the name of the documentary, and that's on Twitter, and updates very regularly, with statements from the RCMP or any emails or, access to information requests that he gets, because he's still very on this case. But I also want to just read out sort of this like tweet that came. Oh yeah, he also has a case that says it's like he has, evidence to suggest that it's obstruction of justice in this case by the RCMP, because of the fact that the head investigator could be actively obstructing justice if it's like has a conflict of interest, right? One of the things was that like looking into kind of like Aaron's history, and apparently there was a history of assault and violent offenses on Aaron's record and everything like that, like when he dug a little bit deeper. So saying that like this is someone who could have had a violent history, and that's on the official Twitter from this filmmaker. So but it's all alleged at this point, or I guess if it's on a court document or police document that it's true. But it's like the paperwork from, at that time, William Jason Kenny. And it's kind of like, it's from the 1997. Turns out this was not the first time during those years that Kenny was charged with assault. Records show 2 prior assaults involving the same individual, as well as a 4th charge a few years later involving another person. So that's just a little bit of history, looking into a little bit of Aaron's criminal history, according to this Twitter account by this filmmaker, but it's police records allegedly. So that's also just an interesting note. Not know if it really pertains to anything in this case, but just an interesting side note. So yeah, it's just crazy. So we'll keep updating you as updates come, and if you follow that Twitter account, you'll get all of those sort of updates, and I'm sure more will come, and hopefully maybe they can resolve this case. Maybe someone will come forward with more information. Maybe someone will confess. Who knows? As you know, as years go on, it gets longer and longer away from it. People die, witnesses die, people forget details, as we've seen in this case with the recounting of several stories. So super sad and just super mysterious, and overall like just perplexing. I can't really, just confusing to me. What are you guys' final thoughts?
Yeah, it is confusing. It's so mysterious, and I still can't like put my finger on what I think is the strongest theory. Like I'm going back and forth, so I don't even have a conclusion for myself.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I don't know what to believe. I don't know where to begin to like. I don't even know. I can't even wrap my head around what's happening. It's so many people involved, so many different things happening, so many people saying this and that. It's so confusing. I can't figure out what's gonna happen next.
Honestly, I feel like if they do find his body in like a ravine or not on someone's actual property, like they're still not going to have any evidence of what happened. At least they would have his remains for his mom to finally have some peace, but they aren't going to know the whole story, even if they do find his remains in a cave or something. So that's kind of a sad part of it as well.
Yeah, that's true. And back in 2017, the RCMP did put out a age progression sketch of what Kenley would have looked like in 2017. And that was even after this information in 2016 that came out that led to a possible location of his body. So also the filmmaker makes the argument, like they're putting out into the media and to all of, the public that there's a chance that he's still out there, but yet they have an active lead that they're not following up on, with the fact that he could have been murdered and they're doing nothing about it, which is frustrating. And also the filmmaker blames the media because the media refused to pick up stories. They were going to initially do a story about sort of these developments, but that was canceled and the media hasn't really picked up the story much either. So he's kind of calling for like everyone to bring attention to this case because there's a lot of injustice happening, and also like a family that's waiting for answers at the end of it all. So just really, really sad. According to the Missing Kenley official website, it says, if you have any information on Kenley Matheson's disappearance or the investigation, please contact Ron Lamoth, the director of Missing Kenley. And that's at Ron, R-O-N, at missingkenley.com. We're going to put links to the documentary. You can watch it on Amazon Prime in Canada and in the US. So if you're in Canada or US, definitely take a look at that documentary because it's very interesting. And we'll put links to all of our sources and to the tip line where you can send any tips you have and all of that stuff. So definitely, yeah. We're at the end of season 4. Right now we don't really have a timeline for when we're going to be back with season 5. We have some, things coming up, like we have some life stuff and some travel and all of this kind of stuff planned. So we don't really know when we're going to actually get season 5 to you, but we're hoping it'll be, relatively quickly. We're going to take a little bit of a break and formulate a plan for season 5, and we'll be back as soon as we can. So just follow us on all the social medias and we'll update you with new season news as it comes. It's been a great season, so thank you so much for listening, and we really appreciate you supporting the show and always letting us know what you think of the episodes and the podcast as a whole. So you can follow us on all the social medias at Crime Family Podcast on Instagram. We're at Crime Family Podcast on Facebook and Crime Family Pod 1 on Twitter. And we also have our Patreon page. I think we're going to actually, for the break, we're going to pause the Patreon. So if you're a member or a patron, you won't be charged because there won't be extra episodes or extra content. So we'll just put a pause on that. So no monthly patronage charges while the break is happening. Find the link to the Patreon if you want to be a patron for our new season. When we start that, we'll let you know. And for the merch, of course, also find the link in the show notes as well. So thank you so much for listening this season, and we'll see you for season 5. So thanks. Until then, take care.